Good morning, this is Nicole Ringgold. Today we're going to play with scraps. We're going to make three-dimensional heart charms that you can use to embellish your pieces. All you'll need is sterling silver scrap and a little bit of extra wire to make a bail. I'm going to be using 18 gauge wire for my bail. Begin by melting your silver down into what I call buttons, so 3 separate buttons. Note that I use a Silquar soldering platform, that's Silquar, and I have found that that's the best platform for fusing or melting down silver so that it does not adhere to the surface. I also use an oxygen propane Little Smith torch. I have a full-length tutorial on this torch should you be interested. I'm using a number 6 torch tip. If I were to make a larger heart than what I'm showing you, I would transfer over to a number 7 torch tip. I should have mentioned that before you begin, be sure that there's no fine silver in this mix. You only want to have sterling silver. Don't worry if there is a little bit of solder mixed into this. That won't impact your work. And of course, begin with less scrap silver if you're wanting your heart to be smaller than the one that I'm showing you now. Once you've melted your scraps down into 3 buttons, you don't have to wait for them to cool down, but place them all into it looks like a Mickey Mouse head. From here, you're going to be fusing, so you do not need flux, you do not need solder. You do need a pick, and I recommend a titanium pick. That way it does not get hot through the process, and the one I'm using is from Lion Punch Forge. Make sure that your silver is touching. You're going to heat both pieces, watching that they are reaching the same exact melting point temperature at the exact same time in order to fuse. If you see that one side is melting and the other's not, then move your torch over to the side that's not heated sufficiently. And then once they're fused, you can start moving the metal around with the heat of your torch. It's going to look like you're painting with the silver. But essentially what you're doing is heating the silver until it becomes molten, and when it becomes molten, it's going to follow the heat of your torch until it cools down. So then you've got to go back, reheat it until it becomes molten, move your torch, and the silver will follow the heat. As you can see, I'm moving my piece around the platform every so often to ensure that it does not stick to the platform. If you get platform in your piece, you're going to have to grind it out. You will also want to move the angle of your torch. Don't only point down at the piece, point at the piece, down at the piece, because if you're only pointing your torch downward, then your metal is going to pancake outward. My pick is serving several purposes. First, it's helping me turn my piece around. It's helping me re-angle it so that I can access different spots with my torch. It's also acting as a heat sink to ensure that, for instance, should I not want the top portion of the heart to melt inward, I can put my pick there to protect the length or the width. If you plan on mounting your heart onto something, then the bottom side won't matter because it's flat due to it sitting on your soldering platform. However, if you want this to be a 3-dimensional charm, then you'll want to turn it over so that you can round out the bottom side with your torch. Once you're happy with the overall shape of your heart, then from there on, it's simply fine-tuning with the heat of your torch, in which case you're not heating all the way through to the bottom. Again, you're changing the angle of your torch and you're moving the top layer of the silver around with the heat, just to smooth it out. If this part is difficult for you, then you can not worry about it because you're going to be doing some of this work with your flex shaft. However, it's really good practice learning how to move the metal around with the heat of your torch. Plus, it's a lot of fun once you get the hang of it. I'd show a lot more of this process on my Patreon channel, should you be interested. There's one tutorial there where I show how to make a bird skull with this same process. And keep in mind that the torch you're using, the flame, is work hardening your piece. So once you're happy with the shape, you're going to want your silver to reach room temperature. You can cool it down in a quench, or you can just let it cool down, but then you're going to want to anneal it before you carve into it. So for an annealing flame, you'll want more propane than oxygen. Make sure that you soften that silver You're coaxing the fine silver to the surface by annealing it. If you don't anneal it, then the next step in your process is going to be more challenging for you, and your bits and your burrs will quickly go dull. I start with a carbide cone burr. This is the product number for Rio Grande. I use this burr for removing any unwanted blemishes, basically shaving down the silver. Make sure you save that silver dust for future projects. I then use a cutoff wheel to accentuate the V portion of the heart. If you prefer, you can use a file or sandpaper for this particular process. All three methods work just fine. Next, I'm going to be drilling a hole using a drill bit for 18 gauge wire, which is decimal inch .1695 drill bit. For this part in particular, it's very important that your metal is annealed. Otherwise, your drill bit might get stuck in the heart. So then I'm going to take round nose pliers and I'm going to make a lollipop at the top of an 18 gauge wire. So I'll do that a few times for you to see. My wire is about 1 inch in length. I'm wrapping it around my round nose plier, overlapping just slightly, and then I'm taking the pin or the length, the extra length, and moving it back toward me to create a perfect lollipop top. And then you can use needle nose pliers to ensure that when you put it down on your platform, it sits nice and flush on the platform. You're going to be fusing these. Well, I'm going to show you how to fuse these, so no solder at this point in time will be needed. This is the exact same technique used for the barbell chain tutorial, which I showed earlier in my YouTube channel. You'll want to situate this little lollipop appropriately so that you can access the mass, which is the bend. This spot is the most vulnerable. This is the mass. You're going to focus your torch on the mass, put your pick right at 1 o'clock to ensure that you're nudging it inward so that they're touching. Heat the mass, and so that if they're touching, they'll fuse. If they're not touching, they will not fuse. I'm using my pick to ensure that when the metal becomes molten right there in that corner, I can nudge it inward to ensure they're touching, and then they'll fuse. I hope that makes sense. Once they're fused, you'll want to hammer the lollipops, but do not hammer them before fusing them. That makes the process a lot more challenging. And of course, if you're making just one heart, you only need to do this one time. But the reason we're fusing is so that when you do solder the bail into the heart, your seam will not come undone. Then you can snip the tail of this bail, of the lollipop, just so that it fits nice and snugly into the hole that you drilled into the heart. Oh my goodness, that sounded morbid. My apologies. Once your bail is situated within the heart, flux the entire piece. I use Mighty Flux, MYT Flux, which is very similar to Preps. And then I use Easy Solder since this is the only solder joint on this piece. I'm going to pick solder, so I've got a tiny bit of solder already snipped and placed on my work platform right there. And again, I'm using a titanium pick from Lion Punch Forge. When you're pick soldering, be sure to heat the solder, not your pick. And sometimes, like we all have challenges sometimes, I can see that my pick is dirty. So be sure that your pick is clean. Otherwise, either it makes it challenging for you to pick up the solder or it drops off like that. In any case, heat your entire piece until there's a slight yellow hue, which means solder flow point. Pick the solder onto the bail, so it's sitting on my bail. And now I'm going to heat the mass one more time, the entire heart, and the solder will draw from the bail into the hole. I'm going to walk you through that entire process another time. From here, you can put the heart into your pickle. Okay, so I'm snipping the wire so that it's small enough and it can fit into the hole. Make sure it's oriented correctly. And then you're going to flux your entire piece. And I flux everything that my torch touches, which prevents fire stain. It also just makes it a lot easier for me to determine where to place my solder, where to heat. that comes with time. So now I'm going to take my pick and I'm going to pick up easy solder. Heat your solder, not your pick. Make sure that your pick is clean, which mine isn't, but still somehow managed to pick it up. Heat the mass, which is the entire heart, until you see a slight yellow hue. Pick solder to the bale, then heat the mass, and you can protect your bale with your pick as a heat sink. Heat the mass until the solder draws over. Always remember that solder follows heat. Pickle, rinse it off, use this black silicone disc to shine up everything, make sure that it's nice and smooth. From here, you can do liver of sulfur, you can stamp it if you like, you can inset some kind of stone. That's entirely up to you. Feel free to reach out with questions, comments. I do my best to respond to every single one, and I hope you enjoyed it. Have a great day.